Hey Pennsylvania, it's wine o'clock on Wine Time PA. Join Rob, Holly, and Steve as they explore their home state of Pennsylvania and all the wonderful wineries it has to offer. Each month, they take a journey tasting the wines of PA. If you're able, pour a glass of your favorite wine and join us now for Wine Time.
Welcome to another episode of Wine Time PA. I'm your host, Steve, and today I'm joined with my co-host, Rob.
Hello.
And my lovely wife, Holly.
Hello, everybody.
In this installment of Wine Time PA, we are going to talk about La Vigneta Winery. The three of us discuss our visit as well as the wines we enjoy. We visited the winery in March of 2024, so any information that we provide today is based on that time of visit and our own personal experience. We should note we have tried some of their wines previously at wine events, so we were familiar with some of their wines, but this was our first visit to their tasting room. Rob, care to share some more details?
Sure. First, let's start with the name. La Vigneta is Italian and it means the vineyard. Bob and Francesca Howden are listed as the owners, and they've had a long dream of opening a winery with their family, as Francesca's father learned to make wine in Sicily years before. They pursued this dream in 2011. They first sold their wine at local farmers markets, which they still do to this day, and expanded from there. Their tasting room is located in Sarver, PA, which is about 30 minutes northeast of Pittsburgh. They are closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, but reservations are not needed for the rest of the week. In terms of their grapes, they do own some vineyards in the area and grow some grapes for their wines. All their white wine grapes come from Pennsylvania, and the rest, especially the reds, in particular the dry reds, come from Chile or California. They produce over 50,000 bottles a year and have over 20 varieties of wine.
I really like that they got their start at farmers markets. There's something very kind of cool about that I like.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the tasting room itself and the impressions and what to expect when you get, first, it's a tasting room. I know there's some wineries when you visit them, you're actually going to the land where the vineyards and stuff grow, and the tasting room is on that property. This is a separate tasting room, and in this instance, it's in a commercial parking lot. So you'll notice when you pull into the parking lot that there's this really big building and that there's other businesses in the same parking lot as well. In the building, the room is kind of in the middle, and it's really easy to spot the winery as they have this sign and this bright, beautiful blue color that they use on their logo. So just look for the bright blue sign and you'll find the door to get in. When we approached the door, we noticed on the outside there was a tented area off to the side, a little patio. It was closed because we were there in March and the weather was kind of crappy, but it looks like it's a nice place to sit in the warmer months and enjoy your wine. When we first walked inside, my impression was coffee cafe meets winery. There's this display case at the end of this long counter, which has some baked goods and some drinks that you can grab. But the long, tall counter was really nice for the wine tastings. There's some really nice wooden floors, some wooden tables and chairs for seating, and even a little corner that had a couch to relax. So totally giving off that coffee cafe vibe. They had also a little area right inside the door and to the left. It's a wooden display that had some merchandise from sale, such as t-shirts, mugs, and food. They had another table that had chocolates for sale as well, which I appreciated, and they even had some free samples of the chocolates you can sample, which I also appreciated. There's some art pieces on the wall and a TV. I think the art and the decorations of the place was a little bit more minimal, but it worked really well. The one wall was painted in that blue accent color, as long as I think the base of the bar, so they really did a good job with carrying that color nicely throughout the inside of the tasting room. The room is longer than it is wider. It's not super big. There was probably only about 7 or so places to sit. However, I don't think it felt crowded at all. I thought it was spaced really nicely. And I really found this place quite lovely. As somebody who personally likes the coffee cafe kind of vibe, I really like the combination. And if this was a place closer to where we lived, I could see myself visiting it frequently.
Yeah, I really like the fun tree decoration they had in the back corner that was made out of empty wine bottles. It was just...
Yeah, that was pretty neat.
Yeah, a neat way to tie in the whole aesthetic.
Yeah, cute.
So I'll talk a little bit about their tastings. When you first arrive, you can get 5 complimentary 1-ounce samples. Then you can choose to enjoy a glass or a custom flight, which consists of 4 2-ounce samples. What they recommended, and we really agree with, is that for your complimentary samples, maybe try something that's a little outside of your normal tasting profiles, something a little different, or maybe something that's a little at the edge of what you think you may like, because you never know what might surprise you. That way, when you do a flight, you can kind of tailor it to things you know you're going to like or know you want to try, and maybe put in something a little extra that's a little different. The tasting sheet is nice because it's broken down into 3 columns. Since it's Italian-based winery, everything's in Italian, which is nice. Kind of keeps that nice feel going. So Secco, which is Italian for dry, of which they have 8. Semi-dolce, which is semi-sweet, of which they had 7. And dolce, which is the sweeter wines, of which they had 9. They also had 1 sparkling that was not on the menu, but we were able to taste it, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Each category had a range of red, white, and blush. The sweet wines were all fruit wines, with the exception of Moscato, though most of their fruit wines seemed to use the Moscato as their base grape also. Chardonnay was unavailable the day of our visit, so we were unable to try that, and you won't hear anything about it because of that. Their price range was $16 to $25, with most of them being in that $20 per bottle range. Rob, what other drinks did they have if people aren't interested in wine?
Well, as Holly mentioned, it has this nice cafe look and style about the tasting room, and they do offer other drinks such as espressos, Americanos, and cappuccinos.
Yes, I love a good espresso drink, and if we had not been there for wine that day, I definitely would have been trying one of those.
They were making a couple while we were there, and they smelled really good, so I'm sure they taste just as fabulous as well. But in addition to those, they do have a display with some other non-alcoholic beverages, such as flavored sparkling waters, and I believe some sodas. They're a little bit more sophisticated than your Cokes and Pepsis of the world. They did offer a nice carafe of just plain water. That was free, and we were there to partake in that as well between our samples. They had some specialty mixed drinks on a menu, which they had about 8 drinks on that, and it seemed like they changed seasonally. They had things like a cranberry orange mimosa, a maple bourbon smash, which I know I probably would have enjoyed, and a dirty snowman, which is like a white Russian, just to name a few. They had a mixed drinks as well with coffee, bourbon, and rum. Some even had their wines mixed in with them. We didn't notice any beer, but we did notice that right next door in the same building was a craft brewery named Cellar Works Brewing. You are not allowed to bring outside food or drink into the tasting room, but they do offer a variety of food options for you if you so choose. They had a small but tasty menu of things like flatbreads and paninis, and of course a charcuterie board, which is what we had. In fact, it was a pretty large charcuterie board that had some high quality meats and cheeses, fruits, vegetables, dips, and spreads. The meats were really authentic Italian. The cheeses were fabulous. And it was just really delicious. And I know, we all enjoyed that rather a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, completely agree, Rob. I enjoyed everything on the charcuterie board, well, except for the olives, but that's just my personal taste. I even enjoyed the Swiss cheese, which I am usually not a fan of. So we, really indulged in that while we were there tasting wines, and it was really nice. Be sure to visit our social media platforms and see a wonderful picture that we took of the charcuterie board we ordered that day. Now, it's time to talk about the wines. As usual, from this tasting, we have each narrowed it to our top 3 recommendations. These are based on our personal taste, which may be different from your own, so we always encourage, when it comes to wine, drink what you love. As a reminder, we are not being paid or endorsed by La Vigneta or anyone in the wine industry for our recommendations. These are our own personal experiences, which may even vary on any given day or season to season. So let's start with beauty first. Holly, what's your number 3 choice?
Thanks. So my number 3 choice actually is their Madison Rosé. If you listen to the intro episode, I had said I'm not a rosé fan, and I feel like I've actually recommended rosés a lot since we started this journey, so maybe I need to revisit that, or maybe I've been drinking the wrong rosés. Either way, the rosé is almost like flavored water in this way, but in a good way. I mean, good flavored water. First, when you look at it, it's really super light pink. Like, you can barely even see the color, especially in certain lights. It almost does look like water. It's very light bodied. And when you take that first sip, that's what made me think of flavored water. But then in the middle, you get the hint where you say, okay, yeah, this is definitely alcohol I'm drinking. It's not water. But then it finishes with some really nice fruit in your mouth, kind of like a berry watermelon taste. Overall, I thought it was a really nice wine. I could see myself drinking this on a hot day. It's just very light and delicate.
Yeah, delicate is a really good word to describe the Madison Rosé. I thought it was really light and really refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
My number 3 pick is the Syrah. Probably unsurprising if you listen to our intro episode, as I tend to like Syrah when it comes to the drier reds. This one is just a little lighter bodied than most, and I really actually enjoyed that. Especially with summer approaching, it just feels like a nicer dry red to drink when it's a little lighter bodied like that. It was very smooth, very well balanced with those subtle black fruit flavors. I think I got a bit of currant and cherry, and it had that typical Syrah spicy finish, which also finished really smoothly. This is just a really nice example of a Syrah for anybody a little less familiar with that particular grape to have a really nice first experience.
The Syrah almost made my list. I'm not a huge Syrah fan, but I do like dry reds. It was a borderline if I wanted to put this on my recommendation for my third pick, but I decided to go in another direction for my third pick, and that's more on the sweeter side of things, and I chose the Artisan Blush.
Yum.
This is a semi-sweet blend of Fredonia, which I've really been enjoying a lot lately, and the Niagara grape. It's maybe a little sweeter than I would typically indulge in, but it was quite delicious and would be excellent on a warm summer day. I know we kind of say that a lot, but I mean, this one really stood out to me as a refreshing drink. It had some nice, beautiful pink coloring, classic for a blush wine. I was getting a lot of hints of strawberry in there, but it wasn't an overwhelming amount of strawberry. It was just a solid blush wine that, like I said, maybe a little sweeter than I typically choose for wines, but it's one that I'm going to recommend to our listeners for my number 3 pick.
Yeah, it's a good choice. I also actually really like the Artisan Blush and almost recommended it myself. It's got this wonderful fruit flavor, and the color is really one of the most beautiful shades of pink I have ever seen on a blush wine. It actually makes me think it's a very girly drink, but in a good way, because men clearly enjoy it also. But I could see this being served at something like a bridal shower just for the color alone.
Yeah, the color really was quite pretty. It kind of reminded me of like a hot pink that you would see in like a Barbie playset.
You could do a Barbie party with that wine. Watch the movie, drink the wine. It works.
Yeah, and it was delicious. A combination of 2 grapes that I really enjoy, and I really thought about putting this on my list as well. So for my number 2 pick, I went with the Rosso Delicioso. This is a semi-sweet red. Their website says it has fresh notes of Concord, but I wasn't able to determine if it was actually made from the Concord grape. To me, it had this feel and taste that was very familiar to the Fredonia. It had the nice fruit-forward taste, but not overly sweet. It had a slight dryness to the finish that made it really easy to drink more. I bought a bottle to bring home and dissect a little bit more, and I have to admit that I enjoyed more than one glass on a couple of nights.
Yeah, you were drinking that one there for a while. My number 2 pick was the Cabernet Sauvignon.
Good pick.
It's really just a good Cabernet Sauvignon. It had mild hints of fruit, pepper, and oak. I really liked that because they were there, but they were subtle in all of them, but I could still tell they were there. They didn't overpower the wine. It was basically smooth, low tannins, and I really don't have a lot to say about it other than I just thought it was a good example of a Cab Sauvignon.
Yeah, I agree. I like Cab Sauv, but I tend to appreciate it more in a blend. And this is a nice variant that you could drink on its own, and it really highlights the grape for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this was another wine that I almost put on my picks just because it was such a great example of a Cabernet Sauvignon, that those fruit flavors, the pepperiness to it, and the oakiness, it was really just an excellent Cab Sauv. But for my number 2 pick, I'm going to go just adjacent to the Cab Sauv, and this should not come as a surprise, but I'm going to go with, and it's a great name to say, Sangiovese.
Yeah, I love saying that. Sangiovese.
So this again is one of their dry reds, and that's now what, 2 dry reds we've picked so far? Three dry reds we've picked so far. And this one, I almost made it my number 1 pick, but I put something else in my number one slot, but the Sangiovese just had this classic medium dark red coloring to it. It was a medium body, dry red with light to medium tannins, that dry taste at the finish. Well blended between those fruit notes that you got, like some red and black cherry, even some smokiness and pepper and some earth tones in there. Just a very smooth, dry red that would pair well with pasta, which, after all, this is an Italian winery, so no surprise that this was an excellent one. On a side note, if you listen to our introductory episode, you will note that I mentioned I like Chianti wines. Well, I did some research, and it turns out that Chianti wines are made from the Sangiovese grape, at least most Chiantis. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that I like this wine in particular. There isn't much difference between a Chianti and a Sangiovese wine. The main difference is, again, they're both made from the Sangiovese grape, but Chianti more or less refers to just an Italian style of wine. But Chiantis do tend to have a little bit higher amounts of tannins in the finish. The Sangiovese grape is one of the main grapes grown in Italy. In particular, it's grown in the Tuscany region. And the difference between a Chianti wine and a Chianti Classico is that the Chianti Classico wine must contain at least 80% of the Sangiovese grape, with 20% blends of other reds. Well, in any case, this Sangiovese was a great example of what I term an American Chianti wine, and my number 2 pick.
Yeah, I'm so glad this made somebody's list. I really enjoyed the Sangiovese as well, and I struggled with whether I wanted to put that as my number 3 instead of the Syrah, so I'm glad it made the list.
Yeah, the Sangiovese is a great wine, and in fact, it's my number 1 pick. So I think we'll kick us off with talking about number 1s in Sangiovese. And again, Rob, thanks for the interesting history on the grape itself and the Chianti, because that was cool to learn. First, as we learn more things about wine, we're going to try and share that information with you. Again, we're not experts, so if anyone out there listening is an expert and we say something wrong, please correct us because we want to learn. But a word you'll hear a lot with wine is terroir. It's a complex discussion, but the short version of it is that it relates to the land in which the grapes are grown. From the soil to the climate or the weather, there's a lot of varying factors that go into the terroir. And the terroir can affect how the grapes taste, but the winemakers will put their own spin on things. If you're learning about wine, it's not a bad thing to know where the grapes come from and what regions of the world your palate may prefer. It may help you when ordering off a menu at a restaurant, or if you're not familiar with Pennsylvania wines, you can ask them where the grapes come from, and that might help you expand your palate a little bit more. For me, when I heard that the grapes come, most of the dry reds especially, Rob had mentioned, from California and Chile, I was not surprised that my top 2 picks were dry reds, as when I do like dry reds, I tend to like them from those regions. So going back to the Sangiovese, my long one back to it, is that I think it's just a great wine, and everything Rob had said. It was smooth with some black currant notes, with some good light tannins, and a wonderful finish. My experience with this grape is more limited, and the ones I've had in the past with Sangiovese and even Chianti were not exactly favorable, but this one was excellent. We had a bottle. Steve and I had busted it out when our friend Bonnie was in town visiting recently.
Shout out to Bonnie.
Hey, Bonnie. And the 3 of us really loved it, and we finished off that bottle pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a shame, too. I wish we had bought maybe a second bottle, but it is what it is. So my number 1 is the Bianco Delicioso Sparkling. So something that was missing from their tasting sheet was this wine, but they were kind enough to give us a free sample while we were there. So if you happen to go there and this has piqued your interest, make sure to ask them. It's made from the Niagara grape, and it has all those beautiful flavors that you would expect from a Niagara. The carbon dioxide added a really nice effervescent feel and cut back on that typically higher sweetness that you find in most Niagaras, which is really how I like my sparkling wines. A nice blend of sweet and bubbly. I don't really recall ever having a sparkling Niagara before, but this hits so many high points for me. In fact, if I remember correctly, not only did I completely finish my sample, but I think I finished Rob's as well.
Yeah, I just unfortunately wasn't a fan of sparklings, and this one in particular just didn't react well in my palate. So I'm glad, though, that you enjoyed it, Steve. And yes, you did finish off my sample because I know you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'm not always a big fan of sparklings either. This one was just top notch. No one's more surprised than me to put a sparkling at the top, but I do remember you liking the flat version of it a little bit more. So
Yes, I did like the standard version of that a little bit better, and I believe it's might even be one of my honorable mentions. But this to conclude us with our top 3 picks, I'm going to go back to my go-tos, which are dry reds, and in particular, they had a dry red blend, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, but it's the Calegro di Alia, affectionately known though as Chuck.
yeah, care to try that Italian again?
No.
Come on, guys, say it 3 times fast. I dare.
I'm Pennsylvania Dutch and I can barely speak English, let alone Italian. But yes, the hostess called this Chuck wine because their winemaker's name is Chuck, and so they just call it Chuck in honor of him. It's a blended red. I forget what's all in it, but I'm pretty sure it had the Cab Sauv, the Syrah, the Sangiovese. There was one other in there. Perhaps I think that they said Merlot was the 4th one in there. But in any case, I know we all enjoy a good dry blended red, and this had a nice medium dark coloring. It was very smooth to drink, light to almost no tannins in the finish. Lots of hints of berries in the taste, especially in the beginning, but I was still getting berry taste at the end of the drink as well. Again, if you're somebody who likes blended reds like we do, or if you're interested in learning more about blended reds, this is an excellent blended red and why I'm choosing the Chuck as my number 1 pick.
Well, it's interesting because the tasting sheet had 4 dry red wines listed, and we picked all 4 in our recommendations. So,
I mean, it's not surprising for me, but a little surprising for the 2 of you. But they were just very excellent dry reds, and
yeah, they were all good.
Can't recommend them enough.
Yeah, it's not surprising that they all made our list.
Yeah, the dry reds are really where they shined here.
So how about honorable mentions? How about you, Rob? You said about the Bianco Delicioso Flat.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent one, and it's not my top of my list for recommendations, but it's a good one. But I would like to give a shout out to the Sangria del Mercado. This was an interesting wine that I tried both in I believe in the tasting at the beginning, and then I got a glass of it later. This was more or less a strawberry wine for me. It had a lot of notes of strawberry, both in the smell and even the taste, but it wasn't an overwhelming strawberry. And I was surprised to find myself drawn to this because strawberries aren't near the top of my list in terms of fruits I like, but I do enjoy a good strawberry every now and then. It's listed as a semi-sweet. It tasted a lot sweeter than a semi-sweet. But again, remember that the semi-sweet naming is just amount of residual sugars in it. It's not has really anything to do with the sweetness that you're tasting. So it may be, again, another wine that's a little sweeter than I normally prefer, but this would be an excellent wine to drink, especially if you like strawberry and strawberry wines. This would be an excellent one to try, and it's going to be my honorable mention.
Yeah, and I'll add to that another sweet wine as an honorable mention, the Peachberry. This is a real sweet fruit wine, and it reminds me more of a dessert wine. The peach and the blackberry just blended so well together. Both fruits were very present in the flavor profile, which I really enjoyed. A lot of times when you get multiple fruits that are blended together, they kind of one overshadows another, but this one's just really lovely. Those 2 very different flavors just paired very nicely together and didn't overwhelm each other.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad wine. My honorable mention that almost made my list was the Limonata. And this is a semi-sweet white wine, and it's flavored with lemons. I like lemon flavored stuff, especially like in my desserts and things like that. And the flavor is predominant. So if you are a fan of lemons, I highly recommend this. If you don't like lemons, you probably want to avoid this one because you're not getting around that lemon taste at all in this one. And that actually works in as it was listed on their website as one of their best-selling wines. So I'm going to talk a few minutes about some of the wines that they had mentioned are best sellers. Their website lists the Limonada, the Bianco Delicioso, the Sangria, and the Chuck, because I'm not going to try to pronounce that. It's some of their most popular wines. But other wines that we had heard mentioned that are good, some of their best sellers is one, the Dolce Maria. And this is another one that I actually kind of enjoyed a lot myself. It's a sweet wine. It's flavored with strawberry and mango. Though I like sweet wines, this one is a lot. It did end on a sweet note, which I kind of like ending on a sweet note. Like all of their wines, when the fruit is mentioned, I think the flavor is there. Any of their fruit wines, when they mentioned a flavor, you got that in there. The next is their apple pie amore.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was good too.
Yeah, and it just tastes like apple pie with ice cream. Like you just felt like you took a bite of it.
It really did. It was kind of surprising how it really tasted like its name. Not sure how they did it, but kudos.
Yeah, I'm impressed with that. We had it chilled, which I thought was really good, but they mentioned on the tasting sheet that it's also great warmed, and I have a feeling that is true.
I can see around the holiday season having a warm glass of that, and it would be excellent.
Yeah, I agree. I do think most apple wines are better warm, but that doesn't mean they can't be great chilled as well.
Yeah. And then one more I wanted to mention, they said that the time of year can vary for their bestsellers, but one they said around the holidays is they have a cranberry amore that is super popular. And I can understand that because I actually like drinking a cranberry wine around the holidays, and I really enjoyed this and ranked it high in my tasting sheet as well.
It was almost an honorable mention even for me. I'm not a big cranberry fan, but that cranberry amore had a really good flavoring to it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I was surprised by that because I struggle sometimes to get you to even try cranberries.
And I tried that one, and I actually thought about making it an honorable mention. That's how good I liked it.
So what award-winning wines did they have, Rob?
They do have a few wines that are award-winning through the years. The first one I'm going to mention should come as no surprise to the three of us. It was their Artisan Blush.
Mm-hmm.
It won Best of Show at the 2023 Pennsylvania Farm Show. And they also had a few other medals dangling around its bottle the day we were there. Their 2023 Rosso Delicioso was a Best of America Gold at the 2024 Farm Show. And so, again, another one I believe we mentioned here that won awards, and I think kudos to them, and they were excellent wines.
Yeah, we wholeheartedly agree with the judges on this one. Those two wines made our collective recommendation.
Also note that the Bianco Delicioso had a couple medals around them as well. I believe they had 3 medals on them. Sorry, we didn't get to see exactly what they were, but I'm sure they're from the farm show, as most of these wineries go to the farm show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in conclusion, La Vigneta Tasting Room may not be super big, but it is very welcoming with a nice, cozy cafe vibe and a very kind and attentive staff. They offer some delicious wines, particularly in the dry reds, which stood out to all of us. Mm-hmm. You can find more information on your own by visiting their website, La Vigneta Winery, and that's Lavigneta, for those of you who don't speak fluent Italian. They also have a plethora of social media outlets to search as well if you prefer to go that route. And please tune in next month for a new winery. And if you want to know what winery that is, please follow us on our social media outlets under Winetime PA. We will be sharing that information very soon.
Thanks for listening to Wine Time PA with your host Rob, Holly, and Steve. We hope you enjoyed our take on Pennsylvania wineries and all that they have to offer. Please be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast. Also, be sure to follow them on social media for updates and news. Remember, when it comes to wine, drink what you love.